Alright, here we are putting a 8839 back together. The only difference between the 8839 and the 8824 is the cylinder screw brackets. Dormitory, right, 8839, sorry, cylinder screw brackets. So let's put this back together. You'll note the case for the 8839 has this riveted stop lever in place. And now we're putting it back together. So let's do that. Rotate that in the right orientation. Drop your bolt into place. You got to slide because this is an 1.5 inch back set. You need to drop the bolt into place before you can get the base, before you put the base front on, because otherwise you won't be able to put the bolt in the other order. There won't be enough room to pivot it in. So let's get that base front on. Sorry for the air cannons in the background. So there we go. Base front on, deadbolt in place. Base front on, deadbolt in place. Alright, next I'm going to drop the hub lever, aka the retractor lever, in place. There we go, that goes in just like that. Gets a pin. That's the retractor lever pivot pin, hub lever pivot pin. From there, I'm going to jump right to hubs and retractor and so forth. So let's get the hubs and retractor in place. I apologize for the mess. Let me put everything back here. Hubs and retractor. 2 hubs. Inside and outside hub. So there's the outside hub, there's the inside hub with a hub spacer ring, and that keeps them in alignment, just like so. Then I have my retractor. Retractor goes in here. I'm pushing the retractor lever back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this cover screw in. It's a 632 screw, and I'm going to put it in, and it will hold the retractor in place while I work on the lock the rest of the way. So there we go. At this point, I can put the spring in place. So grab the spring. At this point, I'm going to put the auxiliary spring in place. So the auxiliary spring gets angled in here, goes over that emboss on the retractor, and pushes in just like that. Then I have my primary spring. That's a special spring for the 8800. It looks a bit like the spring we use in the 9100, but it is different. And that gets put down just like so. I'm going to make sure that's seated up, and it's not. What's wrong here? My retractor's in the way, preventing that from seating. So I just pulled it forward a little bit, and now I'll seat that. There we go. So you can see, if I didn't have that screw holding the retractor in place, all that would pop apart. But I've got it in place. Next I can put in my latch bolt. There we go. And the latch bolt spring gets seated on that rivet in the back of the lock case. And I just have to angle that up and drop it down right there behind the retractor. And you may have to, at this point, loosen that screw holding the retractor in place. Do not take it out all the way, but the problem there is if it's too tight, the retractor lever is in the way. So there we go. That's in place, ready to drop in. I've got the thumb turn hub. That goes in right there, under the spring in the cutout in the back of the bolt. We've got a cylinder latch retractor lever. Goes right there, and that has to go in front of the tail of the latch bolt. There you go. So it serves 2 functions. It pulls the latch bolt back, and it also helps keep the spring in alignment. Then I have my spacer bushing for the retractor guide plate. There we go. I dropped that in place. I can now put the retractor guide plate in place. And as you're doing that, you may have to just maneuver the retractor lever. You may just have to maneuver the retractor lever or hub lever pivot pin so that it falls into place and doesn't cause a conflict. Now we're dropping in the stop, and that stop has a roll pin in it that interacts with the stop lever. So now we've got the lock back together. We've got to put the cover on, and the cover is relatively easy. You don't have cylinder screw brackets because this is the 8839. You have to pop the thumb turn hub into place and pop the make sure your stop is in line, your retractor lever pivot pin, and your lever hubs. And now start putting some screws in the case. I like to start at the bottom here. There we go. One screw, two screw. All right, and I've got the top lined up, so I'm going to drop a screw in the top, and I've got one more screw to go. But remember, I used that to hold my retractor in place. So what I'm going to do, I got one last thing that's not in alignment, and this is usually the case. That's the deadbolt tail guide pin. So I throw the deadbolt out, and it gives me a lot of grief. So I loosen the cover, throw the deadbolt out, and give it just a light tap, and it'll pop that guide pin into place. So now when I screw down the cover, the guide pin is in place. I have one screw I have to retrieve, and that's from the back of the case that was holding the retractor in place. And you saw as soon as I popped that screw out, the retractor lever was released and the latch moved forward. So there we go. Latch is in place. Let's put the last of the 4 cover screws in place, and we'll check this for function. So we throw the deadbolt, try the exterior, exterior, it doesn't open. Try the interior, it retracts both. And double check the thumb turn. There we go, we got a perfectly working 8839.